Iran got basically a sweetheart deal. They should be pleased with what the United States did, and instead they've been provocative and irresponsible. And the president's actions today show that he is going to not leave those actions unchecked. And they are the first step in a sign that there's a new administration.
That was just moments ago. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, that's an exclusive. He's sitting down with our own Greta Van Susteren. That will air, that interview will, in its entirety at 6 o'clock tonight. But there's Sean Spicer with more reaction, more comment on the White House's decision today to impose new sanctions on Iran. For more on this, other stories topping the headlines right now, I'm joined by Caitlin Huey-Burns, political reporter for RealClearPolitics, and Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill. So, Caitlin, let me start with you. This is interesting, the politics of what the White House is doing with Iran. Donald Trump campaigned against that Iran deal during the campaign. Now the White House, though, taking pains to say the deal is still in place. They're going to leave it in place. And these sanctions drawing some support here from Capitol Hill. So this is something where Donald Trump is actually, for all of the rhetoric, doing something that's a little bit more conventional, maybe.
Right, more traditional. And we saw with the Supreme Court pick that he was able to kind of coalesce the demoralized, in some ways, Republican lawmakers who were upset with the way he handled the immigration executive order. With this, you're hearing a lot of applause from Capitol Hill. Republican lawmakers excited about this, praise from people like even John McCain, who's been very critical of this president already, and Speaker Paul Ryan. So this is something I think that can bring together the party. And I think you might see this from Donald Trump here and there, right? You're going to have these moments where there's, chaos and people are upset with the way the administration is handling things, but he is going to have moments like this that bring the party together.
Niall, let me ask you, I'm curious what you think of this, because I think we're always trying to find what is the strategy. Is there a strategy, a bigger strategy at work here with Donald Trump? Here's what I'm wondering, because we saw this with torture last week. Donald Trump talks about how he likes torture, but then he adds, as a matter of policy, I'm going to defer to my defense secretary. We're not going to have it. He talks about how much he doesn't like the Iran deal. He talks on Twitter today about President Obama supposedly being weak, but then he upholds the Iran deal. Is there a strategy here of keeping his base in line with this kind of talk, but then making different decisions?
I think there is, Steve. I think Donald Trump is all about the projection of toughness, of being uncompromising, of driving a hard bargain. And that has worked for him politically in a big way. I mean, many of his voters believe that he is going to, as they see it, return the United States to a stronger position. But one of the difficulties with those slogans is you have to work out how to deliver them in the real world, in something as complicated as, say, the nuclear deal with Iran, which is, extremely complicated of its own nature, also involves several U.S. allies. And I think in that issue, on the issue like such as torture, Trump is trying to portray this strength while at the same time backing away from it, almost away from the headlines, or in a less sloganeering fashion.
Well, let's shift gears here, too, and talk about the cabinet. The cabinet is still not in place, and now we have one question hanging over all this, and that is, will his nominee, will Betsy DeVos, the nominee to be Education Secretary, actually get through? So, Caitlin, the story right now, 2 Republicans have come out, Collins, Murkowski, they're no votes. That leaves, if every Republican stays in line, that leaves exactly 50 votes for her confirmation. Mike Pence, the VP, as the president of the Senate, would then break the tie. This vote looks like it's going to happen next week. If there's going to be one cabinet pick that gets scotched, it's going to be this one. What are the chances of Democrats picking off one other Republican between now and that vote?
Well, this is really their only option left. And you even hear from red state Democrats who are running for re-election in red states, that group we're going to be keeping an eye on with all of Trump's policies, people like Joe Manchin, Joe Donnelly, others. They have come out in opposing her. What's interesting about this, too, is that they are going to need to keep Jeff Sessions in the Senate long enough to still be a senator before he becomes attorney general, before he gets officially confirmed, to be able to to support this. But what's interesting about this, too, is I was talking to Republican lawmakers, Republican senators from red states earlier this week who said that they've been getting a bulk of their calls have been about DeVos, but they're still supporting her because of her traditional, they line up with her on certain things. But it's interesting because that has been a really key point from constituents.
It does seem that her hearings, of all the confirmation hearings, produced more, I guess you would say, viral moments. I'll give people a taste of this. I'm sure you've seen some of these clips, but this was some of what happened when Betsy DeVos had those confirmation hearings to be Education Secretary.
I think probably I would imagine that there's probably a gun in the school to protect from potential grizzlies. I support accountability.
Equal accountability for all schools that receive federal funding.
I support accountability.
Okay, is that a yes or a no?
I support accountability.
Do you not want to answer?
Niall, I think we got the tape in there. Niall, a little bit of a taste there. I think of some of the things, obviously among her critics, that set alarm bells off, but that I think really crossed over into the mainstream a little bit. It is a question for these Republicans. You've got two who said no right now. The concerns that have been raised, the concerns maybe their constituents are raising versus, hey, do you want to be the Republican who takes down the new Republican president's nominee?
Right, and we have seen Democrats and other opponents of Betsy DeVos aim at certain senators who have not decided to oppose DeVos. I mean, Jeff Flake, for example, was at one time seen by Democrats as a promising target. It would appear that he's going to support her. Now they're talking about Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, who seems inclined to vote for DeVos. But I think Caitlin's point is well made. This is clearly the best chance the Democrats have of stymieing Donald Trump in terms of a cabinet nominee, and it's partly because Betsy DeVos has so many traits or attributes that make her a target for Democrats, a big fundraiser for the Republican Party, a woman of enormous personal wealth, a very conservative figure generally beyond the area of education, and then you have the rather halting performance at the hearing that you just played, Steve. So I think when you put all that together, that's why she is target number one for Democrats.
All right, Niall Stanage and Caitlin Huey-Burns, thanks to both of you. Have a great weekend.